Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Before we begin, a quick housekeeping note. We will be taking questions at the end, so please submit them through the chat. And if you're a member of the press, make sure that you include your name of your organization when you submit your question. I also want to let you know that we are going to close today's event by hearing directly from Sonny Burton himself in a short message that he shares in his own words what Ramadan means to him. My name is Rabia Chaudry. I'm an attorney, an advocate, an author, and I'm a member of the Muslim community. I am honored to be here today to help elevate the case of Sonny Burton, and it's a case that raises urgent questions about justice, proportionality, and mercy. And we are here because the state of Alabama plans to execute Mr. Sonny Burton on March 12th. Mr. Burton did not fire the fatal shot in the crime for which he was convicted. He was, in fact, sentenced under Alabama's felony murder doctrine as a non-shooter. The person who did fire the gun, in fact, later died in prison after the state agreed to commute his sentence to life without parole rather than death. Despite that reality, Alabama now still intends to carry out Mr. Burton's execution. There is extraordinary support for clemency in this case. The victim's daughter, along with 6 of the 8 living jurors who originally heard the evidence, support clemency for Mr. Burton. 3 of these jurors, as well as the victim's daughter, have personally asked Governor Kay Ivey to grant clemency and commute his sentence to life in prison. The scheduled execution date, March 12th, falls in the final 10 days. It falls within the final 10 days of Ramadan, which are the holiest period of the Islamic calendar, and it's a time centered on mercy, reflection, and compassion. Today, you are going to hear from legal counsel and faith leaders about why this moment matters and why there's still time to make a difference. The governor of Alabama has the authority to grant clemency. That decision will determine whether Sonny Burton lives or dies. As someone who has spent over a decade examining wrongful convictions and failures in the justice system, I believe cases like this deserve careful public attention. Sonny Burton did not kill anybody, and he does not deserve to die. Thank you for being here and for helping to bring attention to this critical moment. Our first speaker today is someone who understands this case better than anybody else, and that is Sonny Burton's legal counsel, his attorney of more than 17 years. He will provide important context about the legal history, the clemency request, and why this moment is so critical. Please welcome attorney Matt Schulz. Matt, nice to see you.
It's nice to see you. And thank you, Rabia. Thank you, and thank all of the organizers of this event and everybody who's participating. I won't start listing them all. That gets away from the focus, but I do appreciate you all. And the reason why I appreciate you is because this is such an important issue to get out there, because this is an extreme outlier case that the broader public needs to have brought to their attention. Thank you also for giving that general overview of the facts. And the reason why I thank you for that so much is because I kid you not, and I know some of these things are going to sound ridiculous as I say them, because there are so many ridiculous things in this case. So I kid you not, I often have to tell people the general facts of this case a number of times before they even really comprehend how this happened, much less understand why he still is under a sentence of death. And so without further ado, let's talk about that. What you discussed was absolutely true. Absent the governor's intervention, for all practical purposes, 1 week from tomorrow, the state of Alabama will suffocate to death a 75-year-old grandfather who is confined to a wheelchair, who did not kill anyone. And if that is not a shocking fact in and of itself, given that most people of fair mind would say that the death penalty should apply really only to the worst of the worst. But as if that fact isn't shocking enough, as you also noted, the shooter in this case, even though Mr. Burton didn't see the shooting even take place and was already out of the building when it took place, the shooter was later resentenced to life without parole. And the state agreed to that resentencing. It's not like they were happy about it, and I'm not presenting it as that, but they could have pursued another death sentence against him after his sentence was overturned, and they elected not to. So in so doing, the state itself even recognized that dichotomy of allowing the shooter's sentence to be overturned while keeping the non-shooter on death row was arguably unjust. And that's actually the quote from their briefing in the co-defendant's case. So that's the state's position. And I would submit that people across faiths, and I'll link in some faith things here and let the rest of you focus more on that, and I'll focus more on the legalities, but there are aspects here that overlap because this makes the point as to how broad this coalition is. People across faiths, we have had people of Jewish background, Hindu background, Muslim background, Christian background, all joining on this, but also, shockingly, a large amount of people from broad ends of the political spectrum, including very conservative pro-death penalty individuals who are coming out in favor of commutation in this case. And I think the reason for that is that I would put forth that no government should ever exercise its most severe, solemn, and irreversible punishment unless that government can declare confidently the justice of doing so. And here, by logic, the state of Alabama cannot do that. It has already taken the public position that this is arguably unjust. Therefore, at the very least, even though they did not bring themselves to admit that it was unjust, but if they're saying it's arguably unjust, at the very least, they are conceding that there is a taint of injustice here. And under those circumstances, people from all sorts of backgrounds, and again, including people who are strongly supportive of the death penalty, are in favor of commutation here and have been in favor of commutation in very similar cases in other states. So let's talk about both of those things. First, that is no better seen than by looking at the jurors in this very case. Obviously, all of those are individuals who supported the death penalty. They were willing to vote to impose one. Nonetheless, of the 8 living jurors, 6 of them are supporting clemency. 3 of them have specifically written the governor asking her to commute the sentence, stating that they never would have voted for death in the first place had they known that the shooter would not face the same fate. And that is powerful in and of itself. The Attorney General's office has talked about how this was a jury conviction and wanting to uphold the jury conviction. But here we have again, half of the jury and 6 of the 8 living jurors supporting clemency. And then on the other end of the spectrum, even people outside of this case itself, there have been governors in other states, including very conservative pro-death penalty governors of actively pro-death penalty states like Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, where those governors have recognized that in these situations where the lesser culpable individual was about to be executed and the more culpable had been spared that fate, that would be an injustice. That would be a stain on their justice system to allow that to happen. That's why this is really a quintessential case for clemency. And they tell us in law school not to try to oversell your position. And if you have 2 good witnesses, you don't tell people you have a dozen. You tell them you have 2. I'm not overstating it to state that this really is a quintessential case for clemency. And there are even more amazing factors involved here when you look at the people who are coming out in favor of clemency here. And I've saved the best for last in talking about that for this particular case, and that is the fact, and Mr. Burton is incredibly humbled by this, but the fact that the victim's own daughter accepted his apology and has recognized that and has stated publicly that because he was the non-shooter, even though she supports the death penalty, and she has stated that she still supports the death penalty, but that she believes that commutation is appropriate here, and she's asking the governor to commute his sentence. That, of course, weaves back into the faith aspect of this, because that's a factor that may weave much more into faith than into reason. But I do believe it bleeds in over into both. And I would point out that these governors of these other states, those are governors like Governor Abbott and Governor Perry in Texas, who oversaw hundreds of executions. Literally, Governor Perry oversaw more executions than any governor in the history of the United States. Governor Abbott has overseen many, and they both saw the injustice and saw that executing the lesser culpable individual while allowing the more culpable to be spared from that fate would undermine public respect for their system of justice. And that is what is at stake here now in Alabama. So where am I at on time? There is one more thing I'd really like to mention if I've got just a little bit, like another minute.
You're good on
Of that.
time.
So, okay, great. Because there is one other aspect to this story that I think pairs well with also the faith aspect of this, and the fact that interfaith uh, individuals agree on this. And it's just also something that really humanizes Sonny and is another amazing dichotomy, if you will, and an amazing, really a cruel irony in this case. And that is the fact that in Sonny's younger life, Sonny's own wife was murdered. And Sonny hated the man that murdered his wife. The man was caught and convicted. He had stabbed his wife to death. Sonny hated him for decades. And yet, over the course of decades, he brought himself through his Muslim faith to forgive him. And 35 years after that murder, when that gentleman, the individual who had murdered his wife's killer came up for parole, and the state, as they usually do, will send victims a question asking if they want to object to the parole. Sonny decided not to do so, and he elected not to do so. So amazingly, here is a man who himself pardoned effectively the man who killed his wife's own killer, and yet he stands to be executed 1 week from tomorrow. And here he sits, a man who did not kill anyone, did not encourage anyone to kill anyone, did not ask anyone to kill anyone, did not see it happen, and was not even in the store when it happened. He does accept his responsibility for having participated in that robbery, and he feels incredible guilt for his role in that, which should also lend to the call for clemency. This is a man who is genuinely remorseful and has expressed that in every way that he can. But really, this is one of those cases where, absent the governor's intervention, I guess I'll wrap it up by just saying, not only will the state of Alabama next Thursday suffocate to death a 75-year-old wheelchair-bound grandfather who never killed anyone, and not only will it execute him after resentencing the shooters to life without parole, and not only will it execute him after itself admitting that that execution is arguably unjust, but it will also execute a man who himself pardoned his own wife's killer. And if that does not make a compelling case for clemency, a case where to allow this execution to go forward would represent a stain on Alabama's justice system, and for the governor to intervene, which is what we're asking her to do, just like Governor Perry did, just like Governor Abbott did, just like Governor Stitt did most recently in Oklahoma, and governors of other states as well, Governor McAuliffe in Virginia in a similar case. And we've cited all of those in our materials, and I'm happy to provide those to the press. We, of course, are also happy to talk in depth more about and answer questions, and that's what we're here for. And I can speak off air as well. You can all contact me. We're here as much as I'm available to talk about all that, because there are also just so many other injustices that took place during his trial that even led to this in the first place. But these basic facts, I think, are the most important for people to know about Sonny and who he is, and what we're asking the governor to do, and how reasonable it is in light of this, all of the groups and all of the individuals who are asking for that clemency, and the examples set by the governors in those other states.
Thank you so much, Matt, for not just giving us some incredible context, but I mean, these are truly extraordinary circumstances from every viewpoint about this case, and the support for Mr. Burton's clemency is just overwhelming, it seems. I also have to say thank you so much for just the work you've done, 17, 18 years on this case. You are clearly an incredible advocate, and I can tell that this is something that you live with day and night. So thank you.
Well, thank
Um,
you. Appreciate it.
yeah. We are now going to hear from Mr. Burton's spiritual advisor, a faith leader who is going to speak about the significance of this moment, particularly as it relates to the importance of mercy within his Sonny Burton's religious tradition, Imam Aswan's religious tradition, and also his opposition to Sunni's execution under Muslim principles and teachings. So I'd like to welcome Imam Aswan Abdul Addar of Masjid Baitul Haq in Mobile, Alabama. Welcome, Imam Aswan.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum tullah, and good morning to the distinguished panelists here. Um, it is a privilege and an honor to be part of this coalition of people across the board, faith leaders, the legal teams, the activists, who are all standing up for Brother Charles Sonny Burton. This is the month of Ramadan. This is the month of mercy. This is the month of seeking forgiveness. This is the month of seeking salvation from our Lord and Creator. Having worked with the Sunni Muslim inmates at Holman Prison, I work with also the ones at Fountain. We also work within the minimum facilities as well. Islam has grown within the walls of the prison, and it is truly a mercy. And it is a very eye-opening, enlightening, and awakening for many men, some cases women, and within the facilities, prison facilities here in America. I say that in light of waking up this morning and an article came to me from AL.com, and it stated that Alabama will execute a Muslim man during the month of Ramadan. And the comments were very heartbreaking, to say the least. The scoffers, the mockery, the hatred and vitriol even. How dare he find God now, as one comment put it. Where was God when he committed a crime in his life? Well, many times, many people, we're caught up in our lifestyle or doing things that we think are right. And unfortunately, some things may lead us to events that may put us in a situation where we actually get a chance to sit and reflect. And when speaking with Sonny, he said that's what happened for him. He was living his life however he was living it. But he knows that it wasn't according to what God wanted him to do. So to find Islam in the prison walls is truly a mercy. He, as Matt so eloquently stated, he knows that he committed a wrong. He's repentful for having committed that wrong. He's remorseful for having committed that wrong. But he's also grateful being able to have the chance to repent from that wrong, to make atonement for that wrong, to seek forgiveness for that wrong. And every time I see Brother Sonny and I speak with him, he's thankful for the mercy that God has given him and allowing him to make amends, first and foremost with God, because that's where repentance starts. That's where forgiveness starts. And also being able to reach out to Miss Tori Battle, the daughter of the victim in this case, and apologize and seek her forgiveness, of which she granted. And she mentioned even that her father would grant him the same thing because she said her father was a peaceful and very kind and merciful man. So Islam, for Sonny in this instance, and for all of us that are Muslim, we say the first 10 days we are to seek the mercy of God. The next middle 10, we seek the forgiveness. And the last 10, we are to strive to seek salvation, right? Salvation from what? From the ultimate punishment, what we say would be the hellfire. It is truly a mercy for men like Sonny to be able to find Islam in the prison. That is truly a mercy. So he has borne witness to the fact that there is only one God, and that first commandment, that there is no God but God, and we should give our worship and praise and thanks unto him. And then from there, he seeks to fulfill the pillars of Islam, of something he said he wasn't doing outside: praying, fasting, being charitable, being kind, being respectful, being mannerable, and respecting others, whether it's their property or their bodies, or the sacredness of their bodies themselves. Because in Islam, we know that a person's property and their body, their blood is sacred. So Sonny is learning things that he said he never really learned before, or maybe even fully understood before. So he's grateful and thankful for that, and that is a mercy. He is seeking the forgiveness of God, and he has sought that, and he does it every day. And he tells me, Imam Aswan, you know, this is hard. Prison is hard. Someone who spent over 34 years in prison, he's seen a lot, he's experienced a lot, and it can be very traumatizing. And to have a faith you can lean on to help you navigate all the sometimes cruel nuances that take place within the prison wall, let alone on death row, that is truly a mercy, and is a way for him and a guiding light to gain the mercy and the forgiveness of God. And he shares and tries to teach it with others. He's 75 years old, so he's considered, as they say, one of the OGs, one of the elders. And when you meet him, when you see him, he's always smiling as soon as you see him. And that's a testament to his character, his faith. Um, as Matt stated, his wife, and he mentioned it when we talked about it, the tears in his eyes, to have his wife, someone he loved, murdered. And there was nothing, as he said, he couldn't even be there to protect his wife because of a mistake he made early in his life. Um, but he had the character, the moral character, the ability to forgive. And Allah tells us in the Quran, whoever does that, you have the right of 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 kisas, or life for life, or blood money, or you choose to forgive, and that is the higher standard of character. And Sonny chose the higher standard of character, just like Miss Tory Battle did. She chose the highest standard of character of forgiveness. So that speaks volumes about Sonny. In case people are wondering, has he changed? He has changed. And to be able to forgive someone for murdering your loved one, when most people, and as I told Matt myself, and I told several reporters, I don't know if I could do that, because that's a special characteristic in a human being, in an individual, and it varies from person to person. And for Sonny to be able to do that, for Miss Tory Battle to be able to do that, speaks volumes about those people themselves. And we want people to understand that Sonny has changed. He's not the person who committed the robbery at AutoZone. And I think he paid the price for it. I think he has paid the price for it. He couldn't have got that much money split between 5 and 6 people, and to spend 34 years in prison. I'm pretty sure that debt has been paid. I'm pretty sure that debt has been paid. So I would say to Governor Ivey and others who think he should be executed, for what crime? For what crime? You want to execute him for a life being taken? Well, he didn't take a life. He didn't murder anyone. He didn't kill anyone. He didn't plan it. He didn't organize it. So for what crime? Now, for the robbery, we say he's paid his debt to society after 33 plus years or more. I would love to see Brother Sonny get clemency. I even more so would love to see him pardoned and set free, because he's an elder man in a very fragile condition. He's not a public safety threat, and Islam recognizes that. And I close with, Islam says no one should be killed for another's crime. Sonny didn't kill anyone, so that's not his crime. So the Alabama felony murder law is in opposition to what Islam believes. There's no collective punishment or guilt by association for such an act because he didn't do it himself. So we say to the governor, you say you hold all life sacred, then hold his life sacred. And be merciful to Sonny and grant him clemency so you will be shown mercy. Thank you.
Thank you, Imam Aswan. I really appreciate your thoughts on this. Every faith tradition has a tradition of redemption and a path of redemption. And we are lucky that as people of faith, we know that God is merciful, even though oftentimes people themselves cannot be. And so we are asking Governor Ivey to extend that mercy, the mercy that we all get from our Creator, to Mr. Burton. And for folks who are not familiar with how felony murder works, it is shocking when you talk about these kinds of cases because they often expect that this person must have been somebody who actually killed another person. And that's not how felony murder statutes work. So that's something I encourage folks who are interested in criminal justice to take a look at and to really think deeply about the justice of felony murder laws themselves. I have to move on now. I'm honored now to introduce Reverend Shane Eisner, who is the pastor of the First Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in Montgomery, Alabama. And Reverend Eisner is here in solidarity and to share a brief statement about why faith communities across traditions are paying attention to this case. Please welcome Reverend Eisner.
Thank you very much for having me. It's about 12, 13 years ago, I was traveling in Sarajevo during the month of Ramadan, and there was a night near its end where it seemed like the entire city's Muslim population descended on the Grand Beg Mosque in the old city. Worshippers spilled out from the sanctuary into the courtyard and the surrounding city streets. And they were super busy. And I remember a whole bunch of non-Muslim revelers going to, cafes or bars or restaurants, walked by this pious display of Muslims in prayer with this collective respect. Everyone lowered their voices and chose not to sully their neighbors' holy moments during this holy moment. It was incredibly profound. You had all these people of many faiths or no faith at all paying honor to one another by respecting their neighbor's sanctity. I've thought often about what we could learn from that moment, like broadly speaking. And then more recently, with regard to Sonny Burton, I think that respecting life during Ramadan feels to me like a sufficient reason for commuting his sentence. But having lived with Governor Ivey as my governor for nearly 9 years, I suspect that for her more is required. For instance, I know her to be a woman of sincere Christian faith who takes seriously my faith's call for justice. Her and I may define that differently, but she is not flippant about her office's hard responsibilities. Integrity is important to our governor, as it should be for every Christian leader. Which to me makes this commutation request a necessary thing. Christian scriptures say about love, which is our guiding principle, quote, "It never rejoices in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth." And the truth is that Sonny Burton didn't kill anyone, while those who didn't die for their actions. That to me seems contradictory to any version of justice, including one that demands satisfaction for wrongdoing, which is something Governor Ivey seems to care about. So, allowing for this execution when she could stop it would harm the integrity of her office and of her legacy as governor. When a perpetrator gets mercy, while an accomplice pays the ultimate price, justice of whatever version becomes farce. Not only is mercy sacrificed, honesty is too. So Christians like me and Governor Ivey, who believe that love is paramount, believe that it rejoices in the truth, that integrity matters. Therefore, I pray that she will demonstrate her commitment to that by granting this clemency request. See, justice isn't measured by how many lives you take. It's measured by how fairly you practice it. And as jurors, circumstances, even the victim's very family cry out for mercy, for integrity, I believe the governor should listen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Eisner, for calling upon Governor Ivey's faith, and we pray with you that she responds to that call. We're also honored to be joined by the Reverend R.K. Smith, who's the interim pastor of Dexter Avenue King Memorial Baptist Church of Montgomery. He will share words of faith and solidarity and why his faith compels him to speak against this execution. Welcome, Reverend Smith.
Good morning to the panel. One correction, I was the interim pastor at Dexter. I am no longer the interim, I'm just the associate minister there now.
Apologies for that.
That's quite all right. For a few minutes, I'd like to just talk about forgiveness. We seem to have gotten away from the ability to care for those who may have done wrong, and they acknowledge they're wrong, and yet we're unable to forgive. I know that I don't know the governor personally. I do know she is sort of in the tradition of law and order, but there's also a need to forgive, and it calls us to question as Christians. And so because of that, I have to take a bold stand and ask the governor to please forgive one who has done wrong, who has acknowledged he done wrong, and he's trying to make amends. And we're so bent on wanting to bring about so-called justice. When Jesus hung on the cross and he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. We've come a little further now. We know what we're doing. And the question becomes, do we have the ability to forgive? And I think each Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu have to question each other as well as to challenge us to forgive and to work on that. The governor doesn't have to worry about running for another election. I believe she's at the point of wanting to retire. So there are no enemies or those who can come behind and show a bad light on her. Governor, I appeal to you to show compassion as our Lord and Savior has showed each and every one of us each and every day that we live. It is only right that we ask for clemency. It is only right that the governor reconsiders her act and to do that which we know to be right. And so I appeal to her. I encourage people to write, to call, and to flood the phone lines and to flood the mailboxes and the email addresses and so forth, appealing to her to reconsider and to grant this man the right to live out the rest of his life, not having to worry about for whom the bell tolls. So I'm here to just show my support, to encourage other clergy, spiritual leaders to take a bold stand. And, where two or three of us gather, the Creator is in the midst. We can bring about a change. And I'm sorry that I'm a Baptist preacher, and so I'm on limited time, and I don't want to go far.
Thank you, Reverend Smith. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who is, Reverend Eisner and Mama Swan, Mr. Schultz, all of you who joined us today and spoke and made the case for Sonny Burton's clemency. And I just at this point really want to summarize why this moment matters and actually what happens next too. Look, everything we have heard is clear. Alabama plans to execute a man who did not fire the fatal shot in this crime. The state agreed to resentence the person who did fire that shot to life without parole, and that man died in prison. The jurors right now are asking for mercy. The victim's own daughter is asking for mercy, and the execution is scheduled during the most sacred days of Ramadan. I want to make it clear what we are not asking Governor Ivey is to exonerate or even pardon and free Sonny Burton. We're asking her to grant him clemency so that he can live out the rest of his days and serve a life sentence versus being executed. Governor Kay has the authority to commute Sonny Burton's sentence to life in prison, and that choice would still hold him accountable while recognizing the extraordinary circumstances that surround this case. Now, I have spent years advocating for justice and accountability in our legal system, and cases like Sonny's deserve our utmost attention because if he is executed, it will be an incredible miscarriage of justice. For members of the public and the media, it's time to pay attention right now. We only have a week. March 12th is approaching quickly, but this outcome is not final yet. We encourage everyone listening to learn more, to share the story, to contact the governor's office and urge clemency. As Reverend Smith said, flood those inboxes, pick up the phone calls, jam up those phone lines. You can help by going to charlessonnyburton.com/action and choosing one of many ways you can help urge clemency for Sonny. Once again, that's charlessonnyburton.com/action. Thank you all again for being here, for helping ensure this case receives the attention it deserves. We are going to have questions, but before we do that, we want to hear from Mr. Sonny Burton himself. So here's a short audio clip in which he shares his own words about what Ramadan means to him.
Allah. Um,
Thank you so much, Gigi. And please pass on our prayers, our salams, our greetings, and our love to Mr. Burton. And I'm going to now pass this on to Gigi Peterkin, who's going to be fielding the questions.
Sure. Yes, and that's a fair question. I should have probably stated it a little bit more clearly and stated that she is essentially his last hope. From a realistic standpoint, and Dan, it's nice to talk to you again. He and I spoke the other day. But as Dan knows, I like to be thorough with these types of things, so I'll make that clear. We do have one final pleading that is pending in the United States Supreme Court. From a realistic standpoint, we believe that pleading is very valid and should reopen his case in federal court. However, looking at the way that pleadings have come up through this vehicle, and it's a technical vehicle, so I won't get into all of those details, but just to summarize it, realistically, given that the current makeup of the Supreme Court and the way that they have viewed these types of pleadings, the chances of them intervening are extremely slim. They're not non-existent, but they are extremely slim. So that's why effectively this is now in the hands of the governor. But thank you for that question, because that is a good clarification. We want to be thorough and accurate on these things.
There's a follow-up question. It doesn't look like it's coming from an outlet, but is there not a clemency hearing? Has been a question that's just come in.
Actually, that all depends on what you mean by a clemency hearing. There is no technical right to any sort of a hearing in Alabama. There are actually no official procedures other than what the governor's office sets. The law in the Constitution, it simply grants the governor that clemency power. And as I would point out as earlier, I mean, this case is really essentially what clemency was created for, what the founders of each of the states and the United States created clemency for, as a fail-safe to be able to step in when the system allowed something like this to slip through. So I got a little bit off kilter preaching there, but hopefully I answered the question.
Yes, thank you so much, Matt. I have two other questions. I'm going to save the one that came in earlier for the end. Do you know if they have asked the Pope to direct a plea for clemency to the governor? I'm going to talk a little bit about a joint op-ed that was put together, and then Matt, I think you could come in after me on that. But there was a wonderful joint op-ed, and the link to it, sorry, my brain buffered. The link to it is on Sonny's website that Rabia mentioned earlier. And that was a lovely piece that Reverend Eisner participated in, Imam Aswan participated in, as well as Rabbi Scott Luber and Archbishop Rivatuso, the fairly new archbishop based in Mobile, I believe. And that joint call for mercy from across 4 different faith traditions, and the sharing for how each faith views mercy in the face of wrongdoing, as well as extreme punishment and judgment, which is happening, and what their faith traditions teach about that, is a really moving and wonderful piece. And we're very grateful that everybody lent their voice to that. I think the Archbishop, not that he's to put words in his mouth, but that is, he's the highest, one of the highest in the diocese in Alabama. And I don't know that it's very unusual, I know from other cases, to actually get something from the Vatican. I think, in keeping with Sonny's faith, that wasn't necessarily a direction we went in. But Matt, could you maybe say something more eloquently or have anything to add on that point in terms of our thinking? And then Reverend Eisner.
On that. Well, I guess I would just re-emphasize that we are incredibly grateful to have Archbishop Rivatuso's participation on this. He has been active on this. He wrote a letter to the governor, and also participated in the op-ed asking for clemency. And so we're extremely grateful on that. I don't know if this part's more articulate, but it might be a little bit more fun just to say that I unfortunately do not have any sort of a direct line to Pope Leo. However, if he happens to be listening or getting this message somehow through any sort of press channels that get that to him, I would be more than happy to field his call. And Gigi, you can certainly give him my direct cell number if he wants to give me a chat.
I'll do that. I think Sister Helen Prejean's about as far up as I go in terms of contacts. But Reverend Eisner, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say a brief thing about what we know about Governor Ivey's faith tradition. Clearly, any positive comments on behalf of life from the Vatican would be lovely. But one of the beauties about Reverend Ivey's faith tradition, I'm sure Reverend Smith could say more to this, is as I recall, she's a member of First Baptist Church here in Montgomery, and the Baptist tradition has a sort of deep respect for the individual autonomy of each worshiper, of each faithful person. The idea being that we each wildly stand before God in terms of our worship and of our conscience. And so Governor Ivey has no mediating need to have another faith leader step in and say, hey, you need to do this or you should do this. She has the ability, the responsibility, and the opportunity to stand on her own conscience and say, I think that the Lord requires this of me. And what does the Lord require of me? But to do justice and to love mercy, is Micah 6:8, to walk humbly before God. And so just as a matter of her faith tradition, as a faithful Baptist woman, she has every authorization to say, you know what, this would be the right thing to do, is to protect this life. And my hope would be that she would do that, and that those who would call on her to practice that aspect of her faith would do that. It doesn't need to be the Pope. It can be any of us to encourage her to do what I would hope her faith would call her to do.
Thank you. That was eloquent. Thank you so much. And accurate. Imam Aswan, did you have something to add before I start talking about some events that we're doing for Sunday?
In speaking, as everyone is saying in her faith tradition, I asked Matt personally, what did her own pastor say to her? And I was told he's taking basically like a neutral ground. But I'm wondering what he's saying to her privately, and I'm hoping he's speaking to her privately. Because again, no one should be killed for someone else's crime of killing when they didn't kill anyone. This is totally against God's commandments. Whether you be Muslim or Christian, I come out of a Christian background, and I know that's not there. To kill someone who hasn't committed a crime of killing another person. And in the Quran, of course, it says, and many people have heard this before, whoever takes a life unjustly, it would be as if you kill all of mankind. And whoever saves a life justly and fairly would be like you saved all of mankind. And in Sonny's case, as the evidence shows and proves, he didn't kill anyone. So he doesn't deserve to be executed. And again, as I said earlier, clemency, yes, we would love for clemency to take place, and it's warranted in this situation. And there are cases right in Montgomery itself where a woman who had her husband high for murder, where she was found guilty and sentenced to the death penalty. But that case was overturned, and she's doing life without parole. And she was the organizer, the planner, even the financier of it. And she's living with life without parole, and her death sentence was overturned, and Sonny didn't do any of that. And that took place right in Montgomery. And that's part of AL.com's, one of the articles that came out this morning. So Sonny is very deserving of clemency. And I even say, as I said earlier, even at 75, fragile, I think he's paid his debt. for his robbery, the part of the robbery of AutoZone. 34 years? That's not enough? I think it's enough. So clemency, definitely warranted. And may may Allah guide Governor Ivey's heart to do the right thing and grant him clemency.
I'm on mute. Thank you for that. Before I let everybody go, and thank you everyone for spending time with us today, there are 2 upcoming actions that I wanted to alert and mobilize everybody listening to, and then I think I'm going to let Reverend Smith have a final word before we sign off. But before we go, March 9th, which is this coming Monday, it is the last Mercy Monday, which has been a series of vigils in front of the Governor's Mansion on Perry Street. If you are local to Montgomery, Alabama, and you want to join that, they will meet at 7:30 as usual. At about the halfway point, though, they're going to be marching down to the Capitol to drop off the petition signatures to the governor's office. It's about a 1.5 mile walk. So we understand for those who aren't comfortable making that walk, if you wanted to drive down to the Capitol and meet them, they should be getting there, I would say, between 8 and 8:15. If you do want to walk down, but that walk back seems daunting, we'll have folks to give rides back to your car on Perry Street if that was your starting point. But please join us. This will be the petition drop to the governor's office. It will be the march. We are not planning a larger event later that day, but having presence and having people there is definitely warranted and welcome. On March 12th, if we have not gotten word by this time that the governor has decided to do the right thing and grant clemency, there will be 6 hours for Sonny on the Capitol steps. I'll be very transparent that the agenda is still being worked out, but I know that we'll be there from 12 noon to 6 p.m. We are hoping for a large crowd. I know many of our fellow organizers from across the country are coming in to join us. And there will be an hour that we're going to have some programming in terms of speakers. There will be a live stream. There will be more information coming out about that in this week's newsletter that you can subscribe to on the website, as well as through all of our other social channels. So petition drop March 9th, 6 hours for Sonny on March 12th at the Capitol. More coming for that. If you want to sign up for Sonny's newsletter, it's Join Team Sonny on his website, charlessonnyburton.com. I'll type it into the chat. And you can also sign the petition there. The phone number for the governor's office is there. You can email the governor's office there. You can find your representatives. If you're in Alabama, there's a list to find your local representatives, because the governor's colleagues, I think, should be putting pressure on her if they haven't already to do the right thing. I don't know how you can hear this story and not come to the conclusion that clemency is the only right thing forward. So with that, Reverend Smith, if you have a last word for us, and then we are going to sign off.
By all means, first of all, I offer up prayer to attorneys, journalists, my fellow clergymen, and all of those that know that which is right. And I would hope, pray, and trust that the governor will find it in her heart to act on that which is right. And rarely do I call politicians right, but in this case, I know she has the ability to impact and make a change and to save this man. And all we're asking for is clemency. So we pray that she will have a change of heart.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Rabia Chaudry, thank you for emceeing. To all of our speakers, thank you for being here. To everyone who's joined us, this recording will be available. Please share it widely, and thanks for taking the time.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
and anyone in the
Thank you.
press that wants to reach out to us to the extent that we have availability, we are more than happy to engage. And please feel free to contact Gigi and Amplify for that as well. We'll be coordinating quite a bit with them. We can provide them statements as things are going forward if we're unavailable. But I also am more than happy to engage directly and even connect people with members of his family to the extent that that's available as well. So please feel free to reach out.
Thank you. And if you're
Thank
a
you,
listener, if you're a listener of the Undisclosed podcast, stay tuned. There might be a surprise for you all on Monday. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. You have a fantastic
Thank
day.
you.
Thank you.
And thank you all.
Welcome. I appreciate it. Assalamu alaikum.